All right. Welcome back, everyone, to Fermat Fridays. And these are my favorite Fermat Fridays because I've got a customer joining the pod today. I've got Jen Johnson from Union Brands joining. And Union Brands is a little bit of a unique situation, Jen. So I was hoping that to start this off, maybe you could explain what Union Brands is for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're kind of a unique model in terms of a business model because we are not just strictly an agency and we're not strictly a brand. So we have kind of this hybrid three pillar model where we have owned brands that we develop from product design through branding to execution. Then we have kind of joint venture projects that we work on with OEM type of customers for their clients too. And then we have just the straight agency work, which we really specialize in direct to consumer, high average order value products. That's really our sweet spot and what we love to do.
Amazing. Great summary. So in terms of the own, like we've got the own brands, we've got the agency work. I know we're going to talk about a few of those own brands as it relates to, I guess through this conversation, we're going to talk about acquisition strategies, opportunities, some pitfalls that you kind of run into. Um, for the brands we're going to talk about today, do you mind just giving like a quick overview of what are the brands, what did they sell, what's the price point? Like, let's give people a little bit of an understanding of like the type of acquisition and the type of marketing we're going to be talking about.
Absolutely. So Gladly Family is our baby brand. It's literally our baby and it's for babies. It is a stroller wagon focused brand. That was our first product that we came out with. And so we've been around for a little less than 3 years and it's been an amazing explosion. We've definitely crossed way over the six figures mark in revenue, which is awesome. And, the thing is that getting into the baby products industry, people really need trust. So it can be hard for a new brand to break in. So we have to be really intentional about our messaging and how we treat our customers and our customer experience. And it's also an expensive product. So we have wagons anywhere from $4.99 to $8.99 for the quality and the value that we offer, a value proposition compared to what's on the market. We are quite good. Um, but still, it's a lot to ask someone to spend. And so we want to make
Yep.
sure we're communicating everything to them that they need to know to make the decision. And it's also not an in-store purchase because, a few years ago, what's it called? Babies R Us went out of business. There, Bye Baby, things are changing there. So there's not a lot of places to see the product in person. So we have to be able to show and not just tell, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a ton of sense, and I love that because I know we're gonna hit on the show and not just tell component of this as we go through as well. So, um, in terms of okay, we know a little bit about the product, we know a little bit about Union Brands. Let's go into kind of like acquisition and D2C right now. So,
Mhm.
in terms of what you're seeing, what's on your like mind, what's on your plate right now, like what do you see as kind of like some of the biggest opportunities, or maybe some of like the biggest problem areas right now when it comes to D2C acquisition?
I think especially when it comes to Gladly or any product that has a high dollar figure, it's about the timing that it takes for the person to be exposed to the brand and the product, and then to get them to make the decision. And how do you get into their consideration set? What we found is that it takes 7 to 10 days from the first digital touch point for the person to make the decision to make the purchase. And, I always harp on the whole conversion rate optimization. You'll see all these ads all over Instagram of agencies like they're going to put it through the roof of your website. But the problem is that your website also has to be a brand flagship. And um, despite the awesome tools that we have with platforms like Shopify, our team is a Shopify partner, but it can be very difficult to make all of those kinds of changes and test them to your shop. And that's where the Fermat Shop really helps because we can segment different messages, different audiences, different third party validation, and test all of that without a heavy lift of making all these changes to the website. which is time consuming, expensive, and it might not work.
In terms like, let's go deeper. I want to go deeper on like the segmenting on message, audience, social proof,
Hmm.
that sort of thing. So we'll come back to that in a second. But you said something really interesting there that I want to dig a little bit deeper on. So like, hey, we're doing all this, and we can do it on the website, but the website has to be a brand flagship. Like, can you expand on that a little bit more? Like, why is that a problem?
Well, for me, it's a problem because not so much with Gladly, but let's just say another one of our customers. They want to segment two different, very different demographics who we know can use their products. And if we change all the messaging on the website to appeal to only one core demographic, these secondary demographics are going to fall by the wayside or vice versa. And we know that different audiences respond better to different messages. So, like, I guess for Gladly, an example might be yes, of course, we're going to be talking about beach season in the summer, but we can offer targeted offers to specific groups that we don't have to also put on our website. Because another issue is if you are building your brand, you do not want to be training consumers that you're like 20% off this week, 10% off this week, on these on your website, on these big like yes, there are times that you want to have like a site-wide sale, but like once or twice a year. But being able to offer different demographics offers that are enticing to them in a more structured way is very beneficial.
I think that's super super insightful. And like one thing we say at Fermat all the time is that the website has to be average, and like not average in a bad way, but average in a good way, right? Like you don't
Yes,
know like you could be coming in from this message, you could be coming in wanting this. So it kind of has to be a jack of all trades, where a lot of times in your ads, you don't want to be a jack of all trades. You want to be a
that's right.
master of one. And I want to go
And
target and do something very specific.
And I think it's important to recognize too that, like, yes, websites are for e-commerce, but they have other purposes too. They have brand building purposes, they have, investor purposes. Like, if you just went, you could have a lot of bells and whistles that could actually denigrate your brand or take your brand down a little bit in the eyes of the customer. So, it's not a one size, it needs to be a one size fits all. It can't be so specific, I guess. And that's why I like what you're saying. It needs to be average. Like, it needs to be able to appeal to all the demographic of people that are going to be looking at this site and trying to understand about your brand and company.
And I think that's why so many D2C marketers have become so I don't know what the word I want to use here is. I'm going to use the word obsessed. I don't know if that's the word I actually want to use with paid social ads, right? Because paid social, like when I go, I can change messaging, I can change visuals. Like it's very
Yes,
easy for me to experiment at the ad level than it is at the site. But I think like one of
yes,
the problems historically is when you want to be a master of one, you make all this like great, like these new, like you were saying, I go after a new message, a new value prop, I go after a new
yes,
audience, and I say these things at the ad level, but where am I gonna put them from here? Do I
yes.
put them
And
into
then
my average site?
And then when the person hits that, and then what are you going to do? Like spend all this time making all these specialized landing pages? I mean, and then your site gets messy and slower, can be slower too, right? Because you've got like all these tons of different things where you're driving, but it's not so easy to always make those things very e-commerce optimized, based on whatever theme you're using, and you want to still keep the brand presentation. But what we've definitely seen is when you're just driving to the website, sometimes if you're trying to have a different message and the landing page doesn't pay off with what the ad messaging was, boom, they bounce because they're like, where am I? I don't get this. This doesn't make sense. I'm moving on to the next thing because everyone has such a short attention span online. Like, if this doesn't connect the dots for me in 5 seconds, then see you later. I'll go check something else out.
1000% agree. And you hit on a few, like you actually talked about like scoped offers too, which I think is like a really interesting one where, hey, I want to present an offer to someone or like a particular group, but I don't want that to be available to everything. And again, when you're driving everyone to the site, like scoped offer and like offer experimentation becomes very difficult on the site because you're always going to have like,
Yes.
I call it kind of leakage, right? Like you are going to try to make it so that only a particular group can find it, but inevitably everyone will eventually find it, and you're not really like scoping that offer to a particular
And
audience
and
anymore.
and then and if you want to just test an offer to see if it's resonating or not before you make it a widespread offer, it makes it very difficult. And also, let me tell you right now that moms and dads, parents, audience, they talk to each other online. And I can tell you every day people in customer service will say like, I heard somebody got this offer, I heard somebody got that offer. So we want to make sure obviously we're being fair to everyone, but we also as a business need to be able to test things before we roll them out. So having it all on the website and just doesn't work, for us.
So earlier you were talking about being able to segment on audience, segment on message, segment on like different types of social proof. You were talking a bit like you've already started to hit on how Fermat has kind of helped you do some of these things. So maybe in terms of like those three pillars, like how has Fermat been different for you versus the website for when you want to start to try to chop things up like this?
So the speed of putting the shops together has been amazing. Um, we can bang out like five different shops in like an hour or so, right? Because we have all these pieces that we've added. Also, the AI generation helping to create snippets, which are just these little modules of messaging that we can save and reuse, has really cut down a lot on our time scale. I'll give an example of another brand that we work with as a customer, which is Bravo Monster RC Cars. They are really cool. They are like luxury, very high design level RC cars. Um, I love to brag about them because they're the only RC car in the world that has won a Red Dot Design Award. And if you're a design nerd like me, then you like, oh, ooh. And they're really cool. They drift, it's amazing. But there's two audiences for that are very, very different. One is the audience that is an older guy with a high household income, it's right, who enjoys playing with these cars. And then the other audiences is like kids who like to play with RC cars. And then there's a third audience, which is like RC car racers and enthusiasts. Apparently, there's a whole network of RC car racers, which I have just learned about. So the messaging to those three groups, buying it as a toy, buying it as a fun thing to put in your office and you're the CEO or something of a company, or buying it to race with other cars, those are very different people that we need to speak to. So it just makes it so much easier. And we can also, when we find things that really work, we can clone the Fermat Shop and just keep the structure that works and then change the creative. And that makes everything so fast.
I love that. So I recently found out about RC racing as well. I've watched a few too many TikTok videos on this, so now my TikTok feed is all the racers with they're
Sorry.
like coming up into the pit stop, they're flipping them over and injecting them with like gas and then sending them off. So uh, definitely know about the world, but very interesting, right? Because like we have three different audiences here. We've got kids, we've got like collectors, and we've got like performance RC
Yes.
users, and like
Well, see, you
those
you
are different.
described them way better than I did, so that was
We'll steal
good
this and
job.
get them into the Fermat shops.
Okay, yes. That's who they are, but I like how you did that.
So we have like these three audiences, right? And like not only being able to like segment at the ad level to try to like go find that particular demo, that particular sociographic like of who this is, but then like we were talking about earlier, being able to speak to that. So like my guess is that as you're talking to these three different personas, like not only being able to build like post-click experiences for that audience, but then like you were talking about the messaging, like my guess is that in each of these personas, we probably have like a list of different value props that we can actually
Yes,
like be very specific to from ad to full funnel.
and different, pictures and videos and that kind of thing too. And what's been amazing is Bravo Monster, is actually available globally for it's new to the US since May. It's actually super popular in Japan. Um, but imagine it's August. Imagine that a brand new brand only selling on DTC has a 5% conversion rate using Fermat shops. I
Love.
mean, that has never, I'll just honestly say, I haven't seen that before in that short amount of time. So it just proves what I always say, which is the right message, the right offer to the right people at the right time, and that's where you get success.
So in from your perspective, that conversion rate is a byproduct of being able to speak specifically from ad through to lander, through the product descriptions, like all the way with like the even the way you offer and merchandise this, like end to end, is the reason for that.
Yes, but I also think another contributing factor is the fact that the Fermat shops have a very good structure. So you can change the modules, right? So you can change the order of things. But your team has been so helpful in working with our team to share best practices and give examples and kind of like talk about what you're seeing working. Because it's more than just the landing page. It's more than just the messaging. It's all how this all works together because it's the structure of the page and how the person walks through and at what points do we hit them with the offer? At what point do we hit them with the buy now button? When do we want to hit them with the product grid so they can check out other things? That's an important component as well, I feel.
Love that. Shout out to Grace. We'll give her a shout out
I
on the
love
pod.
Grace. I'm obsessed with Grace. She's so smart.
So with like as you were talking about that, like the structure of this and being able to like present things in a specific way, like I'm just thinking through these kind of like three personas that we have for the RC cars, and it's like imagine you're speaking to this like hardcore racing enthusiast, and like they get onto a landing page just talking about performance and all this stuff, and then like they click through from the landing page to like the details page, and like that details page is showing visuals and like talking about like families with kids and like going out and like just
You're done.
playing
They're
with
like,
this in the parking lot.
goodbye.
Done. Exactly.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Yes.
I think that's like when you were talking like there, that's one of the biggest things, at least one of the biggest values that I see with Fermat is like anyone could like you can always go build a custom landing page, but like that is only one step further in the funnel than the ad.
Yes.
And like people need you need that specificity all the way through that we were talking about, because like you said, if
Yes.
it gets to that point and I see that, then I'm gone. Like there really isn't any recovering from that, because now you are a kid's toy, you're not
And
a
yes.
performance machine.
And what's super interesting to me is, when I'm just looking at my looking at my analytics dashboard right now. Um, but it's interesting to see how much is the in-unit purchase. So it's that seamless experience. And even with a Gladly, with wagons that are, it's a $500 to $900 purchase, we see a lot of in-unit conversion, meaning that the person is making the purchase without even going all the way. I mean, it checks out on our Shopify site, but the person isn't going all the way into our website. And I find that fascinating because they were convinced by the message in the Fermat shop and they were ready to buy and they did it. And then, of course, we have additional revenue that we can track. Well, like the last time that they visited, the last click before they made a purchase on our website was Fermat, which I also appreciate the attribution that you guys do because it's very truthful. It's like, okay, it's last click. If the last place they visited before they make the purchase was a Fermat shop, Fermat gives credit and says, okay, we claim that sale. But it's not like if they go somewhere else, and you probably still should get some credit, but I appreciate that level of transparency on the attribution model as well.
I love that you brought that up, because I was actually going to ask this question with like a $400 price, $400 to $800 price point, like in unit conversion, or like, hey, add click to actually make a
Mm-hmm.
purchase. My assumption there would be for like big ticket items like that might be pretty low. But you're saying like, hey, we're actually seeing people go from ad, and like there's enough here for them to feel like they've gone through enough of consideration, they've learned enough to actually make a purchase right then
And
and there.
that was a surprise to me because when we started, I think we started with Vermont in May, And when that happened, I also thought, well, it might not work for Gladly. This is such a high order value. It's a considered purchase because it's something that you use for a long time, right? You use it for, if you have kids, you're using it with the first one, the second one. There's like a 3 to 5 year period where you're using this thing. But this is always just goes to show you can make assumptions, but you might be wrong. And I never like to make an assumption because I don't know everything. The market changes super fast, and we can use our expertise to directionally, and but you have to like test to understand what's really going to happen. So, um, yeah, that's been very interesting and surprising to me in a great way.
in the best way. And
Yeah.
like, so being able to test all these things, I think like something you and I were talking about previously is like testing versus experimenting, and like having kind of like big ideas versus like small optimizations. Like has that been something that's been easier to do with a tool like Fermat versus maybe some like
Yes.
more like A/B testing type tools?
Yeah, 100%. Because I feel like the small optimizations are already built um, in the way that your team has studied and put together the modules. All of that's like baked in. So we don't have to do that much work on that side of things. I always talk about how, there's all these things. If you go Google conversion rate optimization, you're going to find all these articles about like make the buy button green, or put your social proof above the full, like, okay, duh, we know that. Yes. I mean, we got it. But that's not a deep enough dive, I guess, in 2024 to um, move the needle for sales. I don't think.
it it's so funny because like I feel like the default answer to hey, I don't know is let's go test it. And like I'm all for testing, but sometimes you're testing things that are just like again, it's just going to be like a
A best
plus one,
practice at
right?
this
Like yeah,
point. It's a best
exactly,
practice.
exactly.
Yeah.
And like oh, so and so doesn't like this placement, or so and so for like opinions is like like an easy thing to say is like oh, let's just test it. And usually it's just to be like oh well, like I just don't want to like we're comparing opinions. Whereas like, oh,
Yes.
instead of thinking about these small things, like what if we could go unlock a brand new audience? What if we could bring a new value prop into the market? Like these are things that can actually be net new revenue streams rather
Yes.
than just like an optimization to be slightly more
And
efficient than we
and
already
that
were.
that's 100% true. There is a huge fallacy because everybody talks right now, everyone has to have data driven in front of their name, right? If they're a marketer, we got to say we're data driven this and that. I saw this hilarious meme that was like, somebody smiling and laughing, another person crying. The person crying was data driven marketing. And then, all audiences 18 to 65 plus was like cheering because it is, because that's the one that converted. But there's a sort of like diminishing returns sometimes with testing. Like if you get too granular with your testing, you are like missing the forest for the trees. And
One
and
thousand
what you're
percent.
saying is like about unlocking new audiences. Like we don't need to test some of this stuff. Um, it's not going to really add value in a meaningful way.
I Something that I've been talking a lot about internally is like this concept of like how many when it historically when it wasn't easy to make custom experiences, like how many good ideas just kind of like died on the vine because
Oh, because it's too
hey,
difficult, too
exactly. And it
time
was like oh
consuming,
great hook,
too much
great
effort.
hold, great click through, but the efficiency wasn't there. And it's like
Hmm.
okay, all these like potentially new markets, new like ways to merchandise, all just kind of like oh yeah, we're not going to do that because it was too difficult to match an experience to it. So
Hmm.
let's change the ad to match the experience. So all these ads end up just being like slightly different versions of the same thing optimized for a single path.
Well, and that actually, what's interesting too, you got me thinking about this, is we have used Fermat Shop links in PR for Bravo Monster with incredible results, which is a kind of a different use case than just social ads. But what's really cool about that is like we had a placement in Uncrate, which is the perfect audience that we're talking about, the collector audience. And that link from PR converted so well because it was designed for that audience in that particular public relations placement. So one thing people always love to talk about is like, oh, PR, like how can we track the value of PR and this and that? And I don't, I feel a little bad because I think PR is very valuable beyond just sales, and it's important third party validation for the brand and SEO and everything like that. But that's a way that you can see directly what kind of sales came out of that public relations placement. So we're going to be doing that more.
Amazing. Being able to track it, but like you were saying there, like, hey, this is for the collector audience. But like one thing we didn't even talk about at the beginning here is like matching experiences to the context of the click, right? Like we talked a lot
So
about paid
important.
ads here, and like, hey, someone coming from like a static Facebook image versus a TikTok video, like these are
Yes.
very different platforms, very different like visualizations of your ads. And like if it's too broken between like what I clicked on and what I landed on, then like I'm probably going to bounce. So like in a PR, like I'm featured in a magazine, or I'm featured in like a digital article. If you're able to move someone into kind of like an article type experience, that's going to be less jarring than just like dropping them to a site.
Yeah, it's continuing the experience for them. And that brings up one of our best performing shops for Gladly this summer has been this beach idea. So a lot of the ads were UGC influencer content of taking their kids to the beach and having like this beach experience day, because it's not just about buying the stroller wagon, it's about what can it do for your life? Like what's the actual
Yes.
benefit? Like we can talk features all day long, but that's later. When you're first getting to know the product, it's like, well, what is this going to make my life better? Especially if you're a parent, because I have a 5-year-old and like I'm tired. Like need, I, I need to like understand how does this make my life better. So what we saw was that video when it comes into the Fermat shop right away. The hero creative is the static photo of that family at the beach. So as soon as you click from there and you hit that page, you're like, oh, this is a continuation of the story. This is that same family that I just saw having fun. Now I can get into oh, it does this, it does that, blah, blah, blah.
I love the funnel that you're referencing, and we'll have it up here on the screen for everyone to take a look at. And yeah, like so I look at the product, and like I have a 3-year-old son, and ironically, I was just at the beach last weekend trying to
Oh
push
my
my
gosh, we'll
regular
send you a
stroller to the
wagon, okay?
beach.
We sent Grace a wagon, so we'll send you one too. You guys can test it
But
out for us.
it's like I have felt the pain of trying to get all of my son's stuff to the beach and trekking my stroller through the sand. And like I landed on like I brought that funnel up, and the features didn't even need to necessarily be like laid out for me. It's just like, oh, look at all the like, oh, I can hang that
Yeah,
there.
because
Oh
visually
my
you
God, that
see
can
it.
come with me.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
You visually
Exactly.
understand in a way that is more meaningful than just reading a big list or even just seeing the product. You do need to see the product, on white and like the details, whatever, but seeing the user and having looks like they're having a great experience, and you're like, oh, I get it. I kind of want to have that too.
Love that. Okay, so we talked a lot here. One of my
Hmm.
favorite questions to ask all customers who come onto the show is, if I was to ask you to explain Fermat to your colleague somewhere else, what would you say Fermat is?
I would say Fermat is a conversion tool. I don't know if that's what you're looking for from an answer perspective. Um, it's kind of hard for me to say because what I love about it is it's sort of a new model from a lot of other things that other marketing tools that we use. I like that you have these best practices built in. I like that you have the testing built in, the drag and drop stuff, and you also have the support from the team. You have AI tools to make things faster. So you guys are kind of a bit of a hybrid yourselves, uh, which I appreciate because it also
That's a
allows us
good
to
point.
have a smaller team get bigger results faster.
Yes. We That's one thing we didn't even talk about, is like the bandwidth side of this, right? Is
Oh,
like
yeah.
we alluded to it with, hey, if everything's going to the site, like we talked about, it has to be like, if it's a flagship, it needs to be average, but like that's just one piece of going to the site. And the other piece is like, okay, I want to make a page. Okay. Do I have the resources to do that? Dev,
Hmm.
design, someone to think through like the conversion rate optimization of this.
Yes.
There's just like so many people involved in a site build, theme conflicts, app conflicts. There's just so
Yes.
much to think about.
Yes. And that's a huge issue. And it's a time suck. And it's really not even necessary. It's a resource suck and a time suck. And like then what happens when you have that situation, and I've definitely worked in companies where this has happened, like somebody will come up with this great idea that they want to try, right? But then you go into a meeting and it's like, oh, so and so can't do this, and we're hosted on this, and the ERP system can't connect, and it's just like, it just dies on the vine, and it makes it so slow moving, and it can't keep up with what's happening in the marketplace, which is sad because a lot of really cool marketing ideas just kind of get left on the table.
Yep, you get lost in the details of like trying
Hmm.
to think of everything that could go wrong with the site. Where like if you're able to build something and kind of like in isolation makes it sound like weird and bad, but like in isolation of like all those potential conflicts just lets you build things faster, therefore try more things, therefore find winning outcomes faster.
Yeah, I mean, I think I know it sounds like you're saying in isolation sounds bad, but I think it actually sounds good in a way because it's like encapsulated, right? We can create this
Hmm.
whole experience and without, in a few hours, if even that long, once you get used to it, without having to touch the website or break this or that or cause like this huge issue with operational teams and logistics teams. Now we have this ability, so you don't have to go outside and touch all these other areas of the organization.
Amazing. Jen, I feel like I could just talk to you forever. We could probably make this like a 2 hour episode, but
Nobody wants
to
that. Nobody wants to hear me talking for 2 hours. But I do love Fermat, and it's been such an amazing tool. Like we are so happy to have found you guys, and I just can't wait to see what we're gonna do next together. It's gonna be great.
amazing. I'm glad that we got to partner. And like I talk to Grace all the time, and she's always raving about the ideas that you guys are coming up with together and how fast things are being implemented. And like, oh, we had this, we threw this out, we're scaling this. Like just
Yeah,
the rapid experimentation is just it's super exciting to me.
it's the name of the game. That's the name of the game nowadays. So we gotta be there.
All right, Jen, before I let you go,
Mhm.
anywhere where people can follow along with you, like LinkedIn, Twitter, any place where they can kind of keep tabs with
Um,
what you're doing?
yeah, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, Jen Johnson Latulippe. That's my full name, my married name. Um, but we just started a Union Brands Instagram. We really haven't done anything on it because we are too busy doing work for our clients. Um, but we probably will start at some point soon. But anyone could just, message me if they have questions or want to chat about projects. You know, I'm happy to share whatever I know.
Amazing. Well, Jen, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate you having
All
having
right.
you on the show.
Thanks so much, Alice.